Hey guys, good morning. Dave Conord with the Fire Group at eXp Realty. Excited to invite you guys here to hang out. You have a treat in store for you. Have a combined over 40 years of sales experience coming at you to overcome objections and the best scripts and everything else for the sales process. So capturing your listings, working with your buyers, carrying them through the whole transaction, and anticipating some things and being able to handle the objections that might come up along the way. What to say, how to say it, when to say it, and maybe more importantly, what not to say. So we're going to go through those things with you. And so when we heard from our group that one of the key things that you all wanted to learn about were scripts and objection handlers, it was kind of a no-brainer. Kristen and I immediately said, we're calling Rory. So Rory's been a good friend of ours for a while. He has been a top producing agent for a long time. He's been in the business for right around 20 years.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, so we sold our house not too long ago, and we asked Rory to be our listing agent to sell our house. And so we got to see his scripts in action. We got to see the way he handled us as sellers because we're not easy sellers. Um, we're a little particular and headstrong. And the way he handled us going through the process, the way he worked with the agents on the other side to make sure that we had a great outcome for both sides of the transaction, and working professionally with the other agents, and just throughout the entire process, kind of knowing what to say and how to say it was very impressive. So super excited to have Rory here with us. And I'll share with you real quick. For myself, a lot of people think of me as the recruiting guy, and I've done a lot of years of recruiting. But my last year in sales, before I stepped into a leadership position, I sold 120 homes, and it was me and an assistant. So it was not a big team. So I've sold a couple of houses along the way myself, worked with a few clients, done a few presentations over the years, and have taken just about every sales training course out there that you can take on working with clients. So between the two of us, try to stump us. Let's see what you guys got. Rory, welcome, man. Thank you for being here. What do you want to say?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I'm excited. I love doing this and kind of shooting from the hip and handling objections is fun. And I always look at this as more of an opportunity to really try to understand what the motive is behind the objection versus making the impression that you're trying to overcome and compel somebody to do something against their will. So I don't look at an objection like that. It's more kind of like peeling back the layers to understand the true motivation behind the reservation or the hesitation because it's an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, objections are your best friend, really, when you start to think of it that way, because they really, I mean, it's way better when you get an objection than when you get silence, because
Yeah.
at least number one, you've got a chance, and number two, you know where they're coming from, and if it doesn't come up now, it's going to come up later as a surprise. So,
Right.
yeah, definitely better for that. So, Roy, do you want to go into any common ones that you hear, or should you want to go right to the group to get theirs? What do you prefer?
Completely up to you guys. However you'd like to handle this. I think like the elephant in the room has been in the last 6 months. The changes that we've had in the real estate market for commission. In my listing appointments, that's the biggest one that comes up is, so I hear that we get to save 3% commission. And so that was a big one yesterday in our conversation. And I was talking to people, and there was a couple of raised eyebrows at how I handle it, but I believe the way that I handle it is the correct way. And I'd love to roundtable that. If anyone has an objection, let's get into a conversation and talk about it. So the objection comes up, and they say that they're looking to save money, and they feel like they don't have to pay the buyer commission anymore. And the way I handle that is, well, that could be true. So our agreement when we're sitting down at the table is we establish our fee, okay? Because I'm representing you in this transaction, and you're right. Fundamentally, the way that we've done this has changed. And in August of last year, the SEC, we're no longer allowed to market or advertise what the co-op commission is going to be offered to the buyer agent for their representation of their buyer. So today, what we're going to do is establish what our fee is, and we have that in the listing contract. There is also a spot for us to list what you're willing to pay the buyer agent. Now we can advertise that. We can go out and tell people, hey, we're going to offer you 2.5% or 3% or whatever it is. But you could also view that as a slight disservice to yourself, right? So moving forward, what I do in every scenario now is when an agent calls us and says, hey, are you offering co-op? We say, yep, we're absolutely open to it. So you have to be prepared to offer up to a percentage that you're comfortable with. But we could have multiple offers. And in this situation, we want to work with what's best for your bottom line, right? So I don't care if the buyer's agent's asking for 10% commission. If they're all asking for 10% commission, they have the highest offer and it's the best net to your bottom line. You don't care either, right? They could offer $200,000 over asking price with a 10% commission. It's still the highest net to your bottom line. So that's how I kind of offset that objection and just kind of chop it right at the start, because that's the biggest one that I've come across in the last 6 months. Can't hear you.
All right. Yep.
There you are.
Let's say ultimately it's the same as it's always been, right? In a negotiation, the one who makes the offer is in the weakest position.
Correct.
Right? Because you are the first one to state where you stand from a money standpoint, right? And so, with the seller, you don't want to go out there and say what you're willing to pay or receive or anything else like that. It's a matter of allowing them to come to you and say what they're willing to do, and then you can determine, what the net is that they need to get.
Exactly right. Yep.
Awesome.
And then, it's interesting. I've gotten into some dialogue and some people that were like really, frankly, pissed off that that's the way we were handling it, and on the buyer agent side. And they're like, what do you mean you're not doing this? Is you're dismantling the way that we do business? And I was like, look, I respectfully disagree. I think this is the way that we've always should have been practicing real estate. It's you have an agreement with your buyer, understand that they can work that compensation that you have an agreement for into your offer, and they don't necessarily have to come out of pocket to pay for it, but they've always essentially been paying for both the buyer and seller commission if you really think about it with their finance. Right. So yeah, I think it's the right way to do business. I think it's gonna true up agency. And it gives you an opportunity, whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, to reinforce the value that you bring into the equation.
Love that. Love that. Does anybody have any questions on that or any specifics that where you've run into that in any scenarios? You can throw it in the chat and we'll go ahead. Did I hear someone?
Well, I was just going to say that the amount of buyer's agents, and I even talked to Rory about this, the amount of buyer's agents that come and ask it, and I say, yes, of course, we're offering, it's negotiable. And they just won't stop. They're like, well, what is it? And I'm like, unfortunately, it is, put it in the offer, and then my client and I will discuss. It's bottom line for my client. And some of them are doing the exact thing that we're not supposed to be doing and canceling their appointment, steering their client away because I'm not telling them 2.5 or 3 or whatever else. It's amazing the amount of agents out there that have no clue.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important on the buy side to understand that for your client really, really well, so that you know how to handle that situation for your client. And then that is also something that needs to be handled on the front end. So maybe, Rory, that's another one on the buy side when you're working with your clients. How do you start with that? You fill out the agency, right? You go through that process of what you're getting paid. And now, it used to be, well, the seller typically pays this. And, that was a kind of like, don't worry about what this says because the seller is going to pay it. How do you handle that now that that's changed?
Well, when we're working with buyers, now by the way that, and it's a new standard, but it should be the standard that you've always practiced, is you have buyer agency agreements signed right when you meet them. And it's an explanation that you're getting compensated for the efforts that you're putting in place. And if buyers, are hesitant with that, or they don't want to sign anything, you can do a 1-day buyer agency contract, we write in they can cancel at any time if they don't want representation anymore. I don't believe in handcuffing people to contracts, but I also have conviction in the value that we're bringing to the equation, right? So in my ability to, and again, I think this is it comes with confidence and knowing your value. And if you spend more time on this than is needed, then you're only adding more credence to their concern. So I touch on it and say, yep, our representation is 2.5% for buyer representation. Now, 9 times out of 10, we're able to work that into the offer so that it is a net that comes out of the purchase price from the seller. In the event that the seller is not offering that compensation, then we're going to have to get creative about how we're going to work that into the closing costs. But my fee for representing you in this transaction is 2.5%. Move on. Yeah. If they still have concerns or problems with that, say, well, understand that's the way it's always been. We've always gotten compensated for representation. I'm worth 2.5%. for representing you. And because I'm bringing all the knowledge of the local market, I can help you negotiate and I can help you navigate once we are successful under contract from that point moving forward. We're here every step of the way to help guide you along, and you can leverage the experience that we have in this market to know how to navigate pricing and issues with inspections if there are any, all the way from start to finish.
Yeah. And the buyer has always been responsible for ensuring that the buyer's agent got paid the commission. And that's always been part of the process. So the fact that people maybe got lazy and didn't go through and have that agreement signed, that agreement has been around forever. And it has always been where the buyer signed that they were responsible for paying the buyer's agent commission. And I would treat it like being a co-signer on a loan and saying, listen, ultimately you're responsible for ensuring that this amount of commission is paid to me for the services that I provide. Right now, it's typical that the seller will offer some, sort of, assistance in paying this and even up to paying the entire thing in that structure. However, ultimately, you're responsible, right? So if they pay a portion of it or they don't pay it at all, then there's still a response. It still ultimately comes down to you ensuring that I get paid for my work.
Absolutely right. Yep.
All right. Anybody want to throw something in the chat for us?
Rory, would you ever, let's just say the seller is only offering 1.5% or 2% or something like that. Do you ever push back on the seller and negotiate with him? Let's just say all the terms are agreed upon, yet your commission is significantly less. Do you ever push back on the seller?
On the listing side or the buyer side?
If you're representing the buyer.
If I'm representing the buyer, no, I don't push back on the seller. I don't. You can add it in. I mean, again, we're going back to just the net, right? So it's net to the bottom line. So if it's all in how you're strategically positioning your offer. And if you bring this to the buyer's attention and say, look, this is how this whole thing plays out, is every part of this offer that we're writing into this is consideration for the seller to accept or go with a different offer if you're competing. So every single part of it, whether you're doing inspections, whether you're doing financing contingency, whether you have a seller's assist, whether you're asking for 2.5% buyer commission, if they can come back to you and say, no, we're only offering 2%. Well, our agreement, because we've already established that, is 2.5%. That means you guys have to come up with 0.5% commission. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And again, it's no different than it's always been, right? I mean, if you have an agency agreement in place with your buyer, if you say, listen, I get 3%, and if they're co-oping at 2%, if they're under the old structure, they were offering 2.5% commission to the buyer's agent, and you have an agreement with your buyer that they were going to pay you 3%, there's still 0.5% missing in there that they need to come up with. And they need to understand that when the sellers, when the commissions, the commissions weren't negotiated that way before, right? That structure, it was kind of like, this is the way that it was. Over time, when the sellers started, when there was things were started to move really fast, and sellers started to say, well, I'm only going to do 2.5% or 2% or whatever it is, right? They started to drop those down. right? That was a new thing. And it's like, okay, well, the sellers are adjusting how the money flows, but it's still the money is the money. Like Rory said, it comes down to the net on both sides. And so what the buyer can offer, well, okay, so if I have to pay 3% to my buyer's agent as an example, and the seller is willing to pay 2.5, then I have a 0.5% to come up with. So that adjusts how much I'm able to offer as a price, right? And so as a listing agent, you would say, okay, listen, the less you do here, the buyer only has so much money. Your house only has so much value, and that value includes everything that the buyer is going to need to pay in order to purchase your home and settle on it. It's the whole package. So it's the net on both sides. And as long as everyone knows what the moving parts are and what the net is, then how the money comes out, it really, the market is still the market. The value of the home is the value, and buyers still have what they have in order to purchase, and sellers still need what they need to receive in order to sell. It's moved the dollars into some different buckets sometimes, not always.
Right. So, and that's the other part of this. I think the underlying issue with coming up with scripts and the unease that it causes in a lot of people's minds, and we can call it a number of different things. You can say we've gotten lazy as an industry, but it's also, I think, just courage and conviction in the value that you're bringing and your ability to have an uncomfortable conversation with confidence, right? Because that's really what it is, agents are not comfortable talking about what they're going to ask somebody to be compensated for. Well, if you have the conviction and knowing what you're bringing to the table, and you're able to have that conversation with confidence and not dance around it, then it makes it a non-issue. Even yesterday, we have an upcoming listing, and I didn't like the tone of the text messages that were going back and forth. I said, hey, time out, we need to set up a phone call. And instantly it changed things. And they're like, no, we're not trying to do this or that. And I'm like, look, I want to set the tone right now, because I'm not going to start off the relationship like this. We need to be, collaborative in our approach to this whole thing. And I'm not going to have you firing at me, because I'm the one that knows what I've sold over 1,000 homes here. So I know what we're doing, and this is the tone of how this is going to be moving forward. So I yelled down to Sarah, I was like, this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation you're going to hear, but just letting you know there's going to be a little bit of confrontation here. But I think it's just having the conviction and knowing, not to come across too sternly, but it's having confidence in guiding people through this.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, the confidence, and that's really something when it comes down to delivering on any of the scripts or handling any objections. When you're not in a place of confidence, number one, it shows, and number two, it's harder when people feel it or see it that you're not totally comfortable or not totally confident, then you may deliver the best script, but if it feels like, if your tone goes up like there's a question mark at the end of your statement, then they're looking for guidance, right? They're looking for the fact that you know what you're doing. And that, for us, even being experienced in the business, Rory, when we would have conversations with you, when you would say something, you said it with confidence. You would just, listen, this is how this is going to go, and we're seeing this all the time. You knew the market. And so you said, this is where these are going to go. And we feel that if we do this, this is going to happen. Can I guarantee it? No, but based on everything that we've been seeing doing this in this marketplace for a long time, this is how this should work out. And it was like, it gave us a sense of trust. And even though it's nerve-wracking, but when you start to feel that sense of trust, it transfers that calm over to your client.
Yeah. Especially in the market we're in, right? Another objection that comes up frequently, and you guys feel free to chime in or fire anything that's like a hot button, but one that I think is a fairly common one in the market we're in is, why do we need an agent? Because the market's so hot right now. We have, everyone's telling us our house is going to sell in a day. Why do I need to pay an agent to do that? And, so that comes up too. you know, it's again going back to the confidence that you have in your ability and understanding the market. This is one of the most complex markets that we've dealt with in the last 2 decades that I've been in real estate. You know, it's rapidly changing. We have higher interest rates, we have low inventory, we have rapid appreciation. The market is changing. We're seeing houses that, if you're not positioned correctly, sit on the market for 30 days when the average days of the market is 17 here. And we have people that are still trying to ride this wave of appreciation, thinking that their house is worth way more than it is. And I'm dealing with that literally this week. You know, I have a home that's coming on the market, and the seller thinks it's worth 1.2 million in Kennett Square, and it's not. It might be worth 850 or 9. And you know, it's in your ability to help them navigate it, because you're bringing the value of your experience to this equation. So again, it's just confidence that I think in knowing what you're bringing.
So let's talk about pricing strategy, because that's a conversation where that's probably one of the most. There's the commission conversation that
Yep.
a lot of agents tend to build that up in their heads more than it is, but it's still, anytime we're talking about money, right? That's a big conversation. But then the pricing conversation is a really tough one. And, you know, some agents will, you know, tell their sellers they can get the highest price possible just so they can get the listing. But the bottom line is, working with a seller. The sellers look at the market, they look at what something sold for, they see that, especially when things are ramping up and that sort of thing. And so they feel like, okay, if it's selling here, then I need to price here so I can get offers above or whatever. Like if I need to sell it here, I need to price it here, because they don't understand the pricing strategy. So that, you know, if you price it at the top of the market, you know, that's not always the best way to do it. So talk about how you approach that and how you educate sellers on that pricing strategy.
So my conversation usually goes that way. And, you know, understanding that we're in a rapidly appreciating market, it's never my goal to put your house on sale so that it sells quickly. Our goal in this strategy and in this consultation is to get you the absolute maximum that we can for your house. Would you agree? And so I always use that analogy that if you put your house on the market for $1, what would happen, right? So you'd have a line of people down the street bidding, and you'd have, you know, multiple bids, and it would compete all the way up to what we think is around market value, right? Somebody would write that highest offer and no one else would be willing to outperform that. And that's market value. So our goal and our strategy is to get it in that sweet spot where we're going to attract people that are going to come to the table and write offers on your house. But the mistake that some people make is they position it too high. And even in the market as hot as we're in, if you overprice your house, then you could not pass the sniff test. And after 3 weeks on the market or 4 weeks on the market, that's a fairly normal market in a normal world, but we're not in that anymore. We're dealing with 2.5 weeks of market saturation for inventory. Whereas if you're on for 3 weeks, it becomes psychological at that point, where the buyers are wondering, looks like a great house, why is it still here, right? So once you get to that point, then it doesn't pass the sniff test anymore, and you're looking at potentially offers that are coming in under ask. If that's the case, otherwise you need to reduce. And same thing happened with your house. We weren't trying to position it under market value to put it on fire sale. It wound up going for hundreds of $1,000s over asking price, but it was what we could substantiate in terms of comparable homes that have sold recently in the area. And ultimately, you set records in your neighborhood because of Kristen.
Yes, 100%, Kristen. You know, but what was interesting is you and I had a unique conversation. Just days, we had a strategy in place, we had some pricing, we had everything else. We were looking at everything. You were bringing us all the data to make good, you know, to make good decisions. We did decide to, you know, be on the aggressive side in order to then create the interest, right? And it was, you know, going up. Okay, we could go here. But then just days before putting on the market, you and I had another conversation, and you said, I'd drop it another $50,000.
Yep.
Right. We actually went backwards.
We did.
and we were already felt like we were under what we would sell it for.
Yep.
But we decided to go down another 50, and that was your recommendation. So, imagine working with your sellers and working on a pricing strategy and coming back to them and say, hey, I'm recommending you, like, before we put this on the market, let's ask 50,000 less than what we're asking right now. Right. And so that was in that conversation when I understood the pricing strategy.
Yep.
Right. And Rory had the confidence of this is how this is going to work. We said, let's go for it. And it did. We got a couple $100,000 over asking price. And we were grateful. We were grateful for it. So that the structure works. And that's the thing where if the confidence is in knowing that you have the best interest of your clients at heart. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know that you're doing this to help them, then you can have more conviction in the conversation. And really it's that that changes the client's willingness to listen to you.
Yep. I've been working with a couple of buyers or a couple of sellers for over 2 years now. And, they're not ready to put the house on the market. They know that they're going to be soon, but that's I think goes back to objection handling, and you can't make your priorities more important than theirs. And when they're not ready not ready yet to put the house on the market, then the timing is ultimately my job is to give you the best advice for the timing that it works well for you, right? So if your timing is like I'm gonna render you homeless, and you need to sell in 12 months from now, well, then let's strategize for that, right? So let's build up and understand the market conditions could be going into the fall versus coming into the spring. They're going to be different suggestions, right? So understanding the intricacies of the market and how inventory works and how, the overall trends work year to year and month to month, your advice changes.
Right. So these are all good conversations in the moment. Mm-hmm. How do you set yourself up for success at the beginning of the relationship when you're first sitting down with the potential sellers, right? How does that conversation go at the initial listing consultation so that when you get to these conversations, they're easier? What do you do to prepare for these things?
I came from a background of pharmaceutical sales where they send you away for 2 months and you learn all the, DISC was a big part of that, because when you're dealing with doctors, you need to understand what types of personalities that you're talking to and things like that. So I try to take in as much as I can to try to emulate the person on the other end. If they're super analytical, I jump into numbers. I start talking data and statistics, and that's my forte. That's where I like to be. But it's also if they're super amiable and they've got pictures of kids and all that stuff around, I try to make them comfortable, because the people make the decision about you is the first 30 seconds of meeting you. And I think in your ability to be at the level that they're at is what sets their mind at ease. And then going back to just professionalism, I try to dress the part. I don't wear, jeans or anything when like when I'm at a listing appointment, I'm dressing appropriately. I think that's important. And then, I try to be as prepared as possible. I know everything about the market, the price point, come into that equation. So they can feel comfortable that I'm the professional that they need.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah. And I think, the setting the stage, right. And coming in with all the data and everything else. And then I think also setting the positioning for yourself, like you said, okay, this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, right? When it got to that point, but you're putting that line there and saying, listen, my job is to help you get what you want.
Yeah.
But at some point, if they're going to get in the way of getting themselves what they want, it's an exercise in futility. It never ends well. Right. And you're always going to end up, being the bad guy, in that scenario. Right. And so it's important to set that structure of being the expert, having the confidence. I remember the old script that was, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, one of three things is going to happen here today. Remember that one? The first
Yeah.
one is that I'm going to decide to take, or you're going to decide to, offer me the listing, and that would be great, honestly. The second one is that you're going to decide not to list with me, and that wouldn't be so great. And the third one is that I'm going to decide that I can't take your listing.
Right.
That may be strange, but let me explain. I'm in the business of meeting your needs and exceeding your expectations. And if at any point I feel like you have a need that I can't meet or an expectation that I can't meet or exceed, it wouldn't be fair for me to take your listing. Wouldn't you agree? Right. So you go through those things. So if they come out with something that's unreasonable and say, hey, remember when I said that there might be a time where I decide I can't take your listing? I feel like we've reached that time. You're getting ready to get up and leave. And they're like, well, wait a minute. So it's setting that expectation of like, listen, you have to be willing to allow me to guide you through the process. The reason you have me here today is because one of us has sold thousands of homes and one of us, has not. So the one who has not should be seeking the expertise of the one who has.
Yeah.
And so if they're not in that position, then that's, that is something where you have to be willing to not take business or guide them through that this is how this process is going to work, ultimately. And if they know that you are there to really make sure that their needs are met and that you're going to understand them and dig deep into that and then help them get there, then they're going to be willing to say, okay, I don't understand it, or I don't necessarily agree, but I trust you.
Yep. 100% agree with you, man.
All right, so here's one in here. Internet leads. How can I get a higher appointment setting rate with these people that aren't always motivated or maybe hesitant?
That's a good one, Brandon. So I think setting the correct expectation for you and for your team is understanding what an internet lead is. So internet leads, you can pay for them. You can get them fairly inexpensively, but their quality is also not as high. Now, a Zillow lead is a little bit higher quality lead because they're scrubbed through Zillow, and they're most of the time they're real buyers. But in every case, it's speed to lead. Okay, so as soon as you see an internet lead, you got to think of it in terms of what the user experience is if you flip the computer screen around and the person's on the other side of it, in my opinion, right? So it could be somebody that's just kind of voyeuristically looking at houses online, and they clicked a button and they're like, oh shit, I didn't mean to do that, and you're reaching out and calling them, right? So, or they could just be looking and they could be interested in potentially buying a house in a year or 2 years. So all of those different types of buyers, you can also get a now buyer, right? So, but the percentage of internet leads for conversion, a really successful internet lead conversion campaign would be around 6 to 8%. Okay, so that means 6 to 8% of the time that person's actually going to convert and turn into an actual lead that you're going to work with and put under contract and take them to settlement. So you have to have the ability and the systems and the infrastructure to be able to do that and scrub through it, because you'll bang your head against the wall thinking I'm 90% of the time it's not working. Well, you're outperforming the market by almost twice by getting 10% of the leads, right? So the key is speed to lead. And I was spending a lot of money at one point in years past, I was spending over $140,000 a year on Zillow leads, which is an exorbitant amount of money, but we were converting, and it was feeding leads to the team. Ultimately, we turned them down because the quality of the lead went down. But an internet lead wants answers now, right? If they are real buyers and they're real sellers or whatever they are, they want it, and they're inquiring, you need to be in contact with them within the first 2 minutes. If you go past that 2 minute period, the chances of you converting them drop dramatically, like 70% less chance of converting an internet lead if you wait 2 or more minutes. So it's speed to lead, try to get in contact with them immediately. And then we were making the mistake when we were doing this, and spending a ton of money and trying to ask them too many questions. So we found a higher success rate in giving them what they wanted right off the bat, right? So when they're asking you, they want to go see a house in Westchester, we say, what time works best for you? When do you want to go see it? And then once you lock them into the appointment, you continue the conversation after that. But it's as far as, you know, converting a lead on the internet or on the phone, you need to get and book the appointment first. So book the appointment is my best advice. So they're calling, then you ask the questions. Are you pre-approved? Do you have a mortgage company? Are you working with another agent? And those questions are still crucial and critical parts of this, and are required before I actually meet them face to face. But set the appointment first is my best advice.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, it's catching them while they're still there in front of their computer or phone, looking at it, and everything else is that time. As soon as once they've moved on, and you've lost them.
Yep.
And you know, the scripts typically being when you get in to start asking them the questions, right? Book the appointments. I mean, Rory absolutely nailed it, but it's when you get into asking the questions, it's always about the benefit to them, right? And so to say, listen, I want to make sure we make the best use of your time. You know, in doing this for a long time, I found that the best way to do that is if I have these couple of pieces of information, I can really make sure that we don't waste any of your time, that you get exactly what you want out of, you know, whatever, you know, so there's a make it about them and the questions that you're going to ask instead of, I need to gather this information from you. It's, I want to make sure I make the best use of your time and that you get exactly out of this what you want. And then I can be best prepared, right? And in this market, when things are moving fast, going in, you know, the most prepared is going to put you in the best position to get the best price and to make sure that you get the house that you want.
Yep.
So it's all about selling the benefit on them. So we've got one, Laura Turner said that she would love to hear your thoughts and ideas on how to handle buyers who want to submit lowball offers.
Yeah, Laura, that's a great question. Understanding this market and the environment is where I go directly to start educating them on market conditions and what's happening. So it's an understanding, if you're a first time or if you're whatever buyer that you are, is understanding the market. Now, in some environments, it might be the right move, right? So if the house has been on the market for 60, 70 days, oh my God, it might be the opportunity to come in and negotiate on an offer. But in most of our markets and your markets, we're dealing with low inventory, and you go back to your average sale to list price. Here locally, we're averaging about 101.6% of sale to list price, which doesn't necessarily equate to sellers being willing to negotiate low ball offers from if they're priced correctly. Right. So in a market where we've been rapidly appreciating over the last 3 years, if you owned a house in Chester County in the last 36 months, you've appreciated by 39%. Right. So in a market like that, where we have low inventory and tons of demand, we want you to be as successful as we can. We're trying to get you the best deal possible. And instead of talking about lowball offers, we should be talking about how we structure your offer the best way to make it the most attractive out of the other offers that we're going to be competing against, because that's the environment that we're in. Again, we're trying to get you the best deal possible, and we understand your desire to get that best deal, but sometimes that means waiving inspections and potentially going over asking price. So it's made our job even more valuable to our consumer, to the client, because you have to be able to give them that advice, right? So the worst case scenario would be this: is they find their dream home and they're after it and they want it and they want to try to negotiate on the price, right? And you're representing them. You're doing them a disservice by, and this is again having that courageous conversation and saying, nope, it's a mistake, right? So you want to an offer, you know, a house is listed for 600,000 and you want to go in at 575. That is a mistake, right? Where in this environment, in this market, understanding what has been listed and what is sold, we might need to go to 625. And you might need to waive your inspections if you want to be considered for this, right? Now, the way that impacts your bottom line is understand that you want to go in 575. I'm recommending you go 625 and stick your neck out a little on the line by waiving inspections to be considered. You might not get it, but if you do, that would be a success. And the way that impacts your bottom line is your monthly payment might be $125 to $200 higher than it would have been at 575. So explain to me why you're interested in getting the house at 575. Is it because you just conceptually want a deal and you want to negotiate, or is it for a comfort level and trying to peel back the layers of what the real motivation is there? Because we want to get you into the house.
Yeah. And all that data is so powerful, right? And that's why it's so important. Talk about, if you're a newer agent or you're not producing, as much, where you're totally slammed, consider that a gift of time to really study your market, right? I mean, you want to be working on lead generation, but at the same time, become a master and an expert of your market. Go through and study all the numbers. Study, what's happening at days on market inside of different neighborhoods and communities. Look at the sold price versus the list price, right? Look at what's happening in multiple offer situations and understand the terms of what's going on. Talk to other high producing agents in your local market. Take them out for coffee and ask them about what they're seeing, what are they experiencing, and everything else, so that you can understand that. So when you sit down with your client, you may not be selling a ton of homes, but you can benefit from the experience of people who are, so that you can have that same level of knowledge and confidence as someone who's selling 10 times as many homes as you are. It doesn't mean you go in and go, well, gosh, I'm not selling a lot of houses, so I don't know all of these things. Go find it out. Take the time to study it. There's a lot of information available to you about your market, and then all of the other agents in your area. Go have those conversations, because just, he's rolling off all of this information. You can't do that if you don't know it internally, right? If you don't have that in your head where you really have that inside knowledge of your market, then you won't be able to have that kind of conversation. But it really makes a big difference. And even down to the mortgage side, right? Understanding the financials on that and saying, okay, the difference. And they go, well, to them, they go, oh, it's whatever it is, a $35,000, $45,000, $50,000 difference. And when you talk about what that means based on today's mortgage rates for their, talk to your lender, right? Talk to your lender partner and say, hey, help me understand right now if it's this price versus that price in our market, if the average price of the people I'm going to be working with are going to be here, and if we might end up having to go to here, how would that impact? And they can explain to you the impact on their bottom line, but they can also talk about other programs like a 2-1 buy down or something else like that, right? So there are programs out there, mortgage programs. You can say, listen, you might have to go up to here based on what's happening in the marketplace, but with our lender partners, they have programs like this, or this that can help you get in at that payment that you still want, which is what a lot of people's concern is. What's going to be my monthly payment on this? How does this impact my payment? And to have that in your back pocket from a financing standpoint and say, hey, why don't we sit down with the lender, jump on a call with them real quick, and they can explain to you, because a lot of times they can also help close that for you and put aside some of those concerns and be a really good partner and an advocate for you on that. Put your buyer is hearing from you, but when they hear from a lender, to say, listen, no, this is what it is, and this is whatever. And by the way, there's this program or that program that we can do if that's your concern. And they go, oh, wow. So those are some of the things in going through the process that are super helpful. All right, guys, what else do we have? Do we have any more objections, questions, scripts that you're looking for? Please. Oh, here we got one here from Pam Kirby. Hey, Pamela, how do you handle buyers who seemed ready to go? They send you properties.
Hi.
You have them talk to a lender, but the buyers have not completed the lender information package. Check back with the buyers. They say they're busy, and then radio silence. How do you pull somebody back in when they start to ghost you a little?
Yeah, I think, I kind of try to paint that picture of, guys, we're doing all of this legwork in advance because we want you to be dangerous buyers. And what we don't want to be is behind the 8 ball in a situation where your dream house comes on the market and we have to scramble to do these, to take these steps that are necessary. And that's why we're doing them now. Right. So coming into this spring market, when we're going to see a lot of uptick in activity, a lot of houses are going to be hitting the market, but also a lot of buyers are being queued up as well. The reason why we're asking you to do this, and it's important, is because we want you to be as ready and prepared as possible when the right house does come along. So, and again, you can only push people as hard as they want to be pushed, right? So you just have to give them the information and say, hey, the reason we're asking you to do this is this.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't want to have, like Dave says, commission breath. I checked back. I had the lender call them. I was even going to send them properties again in Stafford, because she said they're ready to go. So,
Yeah.
all right.
One of the things, Pamela, Rory mentioned the disc and the behavior, and that's I'm
Right.
also a huge believer in that, and really getting good at being able to understand their behavioral style just from how they show up, right? Just from how they talk, how they dress, all those other things, all the cues that will help you understand the behavior. But another really important thing to understand is their motivation. And I was talking about running away from or running toward person. Everyone kind of falls into one category predominantly more than another, the carrot or stick, right? And so are they motivated by, achieving something and moving towards something, or are they worried more about the consequences? And when you understand that, you can really guide someone, you can push someone gently and lovingly by understanding how they're motivated. So if they're more motivated by a consequence, then you're talking about the consequences of not doing these things, right? If they're motivated by achieving something quickly and running, these are the ones that want the roadblocks out of the way and green lights, then you're talking about being able to move quickly to grab something, right? To move fast, to achieve what they want to achieve, to get the best of this and all that they're thinking, they're forward thinking in those. Otherwise, they're thinking about the consequence. Like if we don't do this, these are the things that might happen. These are the things, this is, what happens to us. So understanding how they're motivated will allow you to present the reasoning for doing certain actions in a way that gets them to move forward.
And Pam, the other thing I would say is and just by a show of hands, how many of you guys are working with buyers right now? Like all of us are, right? So one of the things that we do and that I've done pretty successfully over the last couple of years is when you're working with a buyer, I literally engage with other agents and I call and talk to other agents that are in production in our area, asking them about, do you have any upcoming inventory or anything in your pipeline that's going to match what my buyers are after? I'll call Sphere. I'll call past clients in different neighborhoods because this is just it's a numbers game, guys. So like it's in your ability to have more conversations with more people, right? So if you're calling into neighborhoods where you've sold houses in the past and you're just literally making it's another point of contact with your sphere or your potential sphere, and you're having a conversation, hey, I'm actively working with buyers, you always get into this real estate conversation, right? And it allows you the opportunity to have another real estate conversation with someone, whether it's a past client or not. So then ultimately you full circle that back to your client, Pam, and you say, hey, just wanted to touch base with you again. I've been working diligently for you, and I've been making phone calls with other agents talking about their upcoming sphere for homes that are not yet on the market, but that are soon to be. And I'm also calling into neighborhoods where I think there's a good potential for you to select a house in. What are you doing on your end? Or you have everything ready? And then they're like, oh shit, I haven't done that yet. You're right. I do need to get all that stuff done because we want to make you as dangerous as possible. And I'm trying to give you access to as much, inside information and give you access to homes potentially that are not on the market to give you that competitive edge. Your job is also to maintain that competitive edge to be ready.
Love it. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. I love it. Awesome. All right, guys, what else? Throw some more at us here. And, Rory, and you're mentioning of, reaching out, right? That's an awesome lead generation tool. Great thing to read, especially heading into a spring market and that sort of thing, saying, hey, we're already noticing, right? Because some people are going, well, it's only January, it's only February, and they're holding off on it. So it's a great time to be reaching out and having those conversations, finding the people that are thinking about it. They're not quite sure what's happening. They've heard differing opinions on the marketplace. But it does give you that kind of stable of like, and some people say, well, I don't know if I want to go through and test it. I don't know X, Y, and Z, but if you bring me someone, we would consider it.
Yep.
Because
I
then
have a
you
listing
reach out to
appointment
everybody
this
else.
week, or next week. I have a listing appointment in a community from doing this. It's a $980,000 home that didn't sell a year and a half ago, and it wasn't the person that I called. I called one of my other potential sellers that put things on pause for a little bit. Just checked in with them, say, hey, I've got a buyer that we're actively looking for, which we do. It's an authentic buyer. And I know that you don't have plans yet, but I was just checking in with you, saying Happy New Year and just touching base. But if you know of anyone coming up or anyone planning to sell your home or sell their home in your neighborhood, would you let me know? And he said, actually, my buddy is planning on selling his house. It was on the market last year. He ultimately pulled it off, but you could call him. He gave me his contact information. I touched base with him yesterday, and we're going out next week.
That's awesome.
So it does work. And this is it's a numbers game of when people are slow again, we bring this up from EXPCon. They said on the I think Leo was on stage saying if you made it through last year, 2024, it was the worst year that we've had in real estate in 30 years. So congratulations. So we're through it, and this is rolling up your sleeves when you have time is just getting on the phone and having conversations. So the challenge is to do that. Just get on the phone, talk to people.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, this is the time right now, right? Don't wait. Don't wait. We talk about the wave. When the wave's coming, you paddle ahead of the wave, not when the wave's underneath you.
Yep.
So we've got time, I think, for one more. Guys, who's going to throw out the last objection, question, or script request? Who's got it? Otherwise, we're going to go to the vault. All right. What do you think? How should we close it out, Rory? What do you?
I'm trying to think of other common ones that come up often. I think we covered.
What about, let's do one on negotiations. Like during the negotiation process, you've got something that comes up where one of the sides, throws something out and the other, your client doesn't want to go along with it or whatever, right? And it causes a stalemate. How do you get through those to still get it to closing and bringing them back to the big picture?
Yeah, I mean, it's depending on the personality, it has the opportunity when you're going through something as big as this to bring in some pretty heated discussions, and emotions can run pretty heavy when you're dealing with people that are disagreeing. I mean, we've all had settlements where the parties had to settle in separate rooms. The title clerk's going back and forth between them, getting signatures, and we've had stalemates at settlement where we weren't sure if it was going to close or not. But in those scenarios, I always try to go back to, I always use the word reasonable, right? So there's a level of reasonability that we need to consider here. And a successful outcome is in you getting everything you want and not conceding everything. It might be reasonable. I'm selling a 300-year-old farmhouse that closes at the end of this month in Malvern. And you can imagine when you have a home inspection, it's fraught with 78 pages worth of, hey, this is an issue, that's an issue, this is an issue, that's an issue. And it's going and having the conversation with the seller. This is a reasonable request, right? So they're asking for the world, and some of this is reasonable. Some of this we should concede on. So maybe not all of it, but some of it, right? So it's always trying to find that middle ground and painting that picture is this is supposed to be a collaborative thing. Sometimes they're rigid and it doesn't work, but I find more success in using that sort of language. And hey, it's reasonable for them to ask this. They don't want to inherit your problem. Your septic system failed, so let's concede. Right. We got to give them something, so any number of things that could potentially come up. So reasonability.
Love that. That's perfect. Yeah, and it's really important to keep your opinions and emotions out of it, right? During the negotiation process, it's really staying super neutral. And our job is to be the ballast, right? During, like, they're up here being tossed by the emotions and everything else up top, and we're bringing them back to the big picture. Hey, remember when we first talked about listing your home, when we first talked about going to find you a home, what we talked about was important to you, why you're doing this, what is the outcome that you want. Let's stay focused on getting you to the outcome that you want, right? This is something, like, well, we weren't expecting this, okay, well, we need to, and this is again when you first start talking to them and first start working with them, is saying, listen, my job is to expect the unexpected. And to be and to know, like, during this process, you just need to know there are very few sales out of all the sales that we do, very few are clockwork with no surprises all the way through. And so just know that those are going to happen when they come up. We're going to stay focused on the big picture, and we're going to get you to the outcome. So during this entire thing, on the front end with a buyer and a seller, it's really important to dial in the outcome that they want and say, okay, so if we get to this outcome, you'll consider that a successful, outcome on your purchase or your sale. This is where we want to go. When we're done, if this happens, then you'll have gotten where you need to go to be able to go to your next phase in life. Great. So during that process, when all those things are happening, let's go back to the outcome. Let's go back to bring them back to the outcome, bring them back to the whatever. Remember, I told you there's going to be some little things along the way. This is one of them. Let's go back to the outcome that we want. How do we still get the outcome that you want despite this surprise? What were you going to say, Rory?
And I think that's really important too, Dave, because from the time that you meet them, building your relationship the whole way up to that point, that is one of the tumultuous points where they could start to question your authenticity, right? So you build up trust through this whole process, and you want to make sure that you're maintaining your authenticity, and especially important in the market we're in, where things, you guys might have a little bit further gap between your closings and your settlements might be further and further apart, where you're kind of feeling like, I'm starving for money here and I'm starving for commissions. I need to sell this house. You got to be very careful about that not coming through in negotiations, because if they're starting to sense that you just want the deal to go through because you need the sale, then you've lost their trust, and that can potentially damage your relationship. So make sure that you maintain that authenticity and guide them through the process when, and also help them to realize, hey, maybe I should concede here, or maybe we should negotiate this. I think it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. All right, guys. So, hey, do me a favor in the chat, throw out as you listen to the scripts and the all of the language here and everything else, what words come to mind for you as you kind of see how would you describe the overall theme of what we're doing here? There we go. Trying to remove our spotlights. Get everybody back on here. Throw some words in the chats, guys. Just do me a favor. Go into your chat here. How would you describe that, right? What words would you use to describe the kind of the overall approach and process? See if we can get a common theme in there. See, partnership, good. Rowing together, resourceful, setting the expectations up front. Is that Shantae? Good. Any other words? Getting to the outcome. Good. Professional. Confidence. Yep. Confidence. Reasonable. Authentic. Good. Those are great words, guys. Seriously. And that's, and that is really the point, right? I think in the end, the authenticity, confidence, professionalism, and then the partnership, working together, with your clients and with the agents on the other side of the transaction. Those are all the things that get you where you want to go. It's a great level of professionalism. And, what they say, the professional is someone who knows what they know and know what they don't know, and they know the difference between the two. And that's really important. So kudos to all of you guys for being here. Really just sharpening your swords. Get out there and learn your market, learn the stats, learn the numbers, learn the process, build relationships with all of the agents in your marketplace. Because I'll tell you, when it comes down to, especially in the negotiation phase, when you've got a great relationship, and we were blessed to work with some great agents on the other side, in the sale of our home, and Rory knows a lot of the agents out there, and so he was able to have those conversations. A lot of you have the same. It's really great when you get to a situation where the emotions are high between the clients, but the agents get to coordinate really well together and stay moving towards serving your clients and getting to a great outcome. And that's the place that you want to be. So again, guys, everybody give a great shout out and thank you to Rory bringing his expertise and his smooth delivery out for you guys. Rory, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. Happy to do it. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Hey, get out there and practice them. And practice makes permanent. So work on some good scripts and then get them ingrained into your head. So when you're working with your clients, you're able to go through and meet their needs. We have another class coming up in a couple of weeks, and we have Lars is going to be helping to teach that one. And the topic is
that's going to be Wednesday.
okay. It's next Wednesday. No.
Yes, it's going to be on the 19th.
Okay.
And at lead
generation. Okay. We've got Kristen's over here, if we can hear her on the microphone. So Lars Henriksen is going to be with me, and we're going to be talking about generating leads. So this is the other hot topic, right? So look forward to seeing you guys there. Guys, it's the market is already starting to warm up. There's a lot of great stuff going on. The projections of this year being a great year ahead. So remember, the wave's coming. Now's the time to be paddling. So get out there and build your business. We love being in business with you. Let us know if there's anything else we can do to help you. All right. Hey, Roy, can we get you back for some more of these?
Absolutely, man. Happy to do it. I love doing this stuff.
Very good. All right. You guys heard it. We have it recorded. All right. Thank you guys. Have an awesome day.
Okay.